I'm very pleased to welcome director Laura Gabbert, whose new film Ottolenghi and the Cakes of Versailles is now playing in select theaters and on demand. Um, Now, your film centers on a Met exhibit about Versailles, in which one of the centerpieces is an assortment of luxury pastries from famous chefs that pays tribute to the history and cultural significance of the French palace. Um, Chef Yotam Ottolenghi, who assembled the team to put this exhibit together and who also worked with them for this historic undertaking, he's an executive producer on the film. Did he approach you about getting involved in this? Did you pitch this to him, or was the Met involved? How did this all come together?
It came together through a company called Original Productions. They had approached Steve Robillard, who produced the film, was at Original Productions at the time. He approached Yotam about doing some kind of project together. And Yotam had been doing these collaborations with the Met for a couple of years. And he said, I have this new food event coming up that we're pairing with this exhibit called Visitors to Versailles. And Steve is a friend, colleague of me, and he called me and he said, what do you think of this? And I heard Yotam Ottolenghi and I got excited because I was a fan already of his. And the idea that it connected food to history and food to art and food to culture just seemed like it'd be really fun and interesting.
And it definitely is. Had you been to Versailles prior to filming?
I had been there once many years ago as a tourist. Yeah, and it was really fun to be there. We were there when tourists are there, but we also got a few hours in the palace by ourselves to film. So that was a real treat, just to wander around that palace and like the House of Mirrors without being packed in, with thousands of tourists.
Yeah, I'd been there probably 20 years ago, and watching the film not only evoked a lot of memories, but it made me wish I could go back right now.
I know, right? I know. It's like this travel envy now, right? When we watch something like this.
Yeah, very much so. One of the things that surprised me most about the film is the innovative technologies that were employed by a lot of the chefs that are featured as subjects, whether it's Sam Bompas's kind of liquor whirlwind,
Yeah.
or Dinara Costco's insane 3D modeled confections. Ottolenghi found a lot of this talent by scrolling through Instagram, it turned out. Now, I wonder, did you experience any kind of a challenge, not only in recruiting these chefs to be a part of the Met exhibit, but also to agree to be filmed as part of a documentary?
Not really. I mean, I think that, I think a lot of these pastry chefs travel anyway and do these kinds of things anyway. It's part of their repertoire, I mean, I think all of the chefs and Yotam really, invited them himself. And I think because the invitation was coming from Yotam and it was going to be at the Met, they all really jumped at the chance to do it. Yeah, because it's a great way to showcase their work. And I think that they also really they were into the idea of collaborating with Yotam.
Well, when I'd like to ask actually about that work.
Yeah.
You mentioned that they kind of do this anyway, they travel around and everything, but I don't know how often are they used to being filmed, and what was it
Right.
like filming the chefs at work, particularly in the 2 days leading up to this big opening when there's a lot of buzz and activity around? Did you have a very small crew? Was it hard sort of staying a fly on the wall, but also capturing all those important moments?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer that part of your question before. So they were open. They signed on for that. When they signed on to do the event, they knew that we would be filming, and they were fine with that. It was a challenge. I mean, there was a lot going on at the same time. We had a second unit filming as well, so I was usually with Yotam and kind of traveling with him where he was going. We had a second unit kind of positioned in the two kitchens at the Met, and then kind of satelliting out to different locations. So there was a lot to keep track of in those last few days, for sure. And then, so for the lead up to the event, we were kind of two small crews. For the event itself, we had, I think, maybe 8 camera people, and the steady cam operator and the whole 9 yards. But that was really just to make sure that we could capture the event, because you can't do a do-over, right? So we really had to capture it. So, but, you know, there were moments to get close-ups of desserts and things like that before they were brought out. I mean, we were able to plan it out really carefully. I had a really great production team, and it was, you know, thought through pretty well, but there's always surprises, you know? Yeah, you can't capture everything. I mean, even like when Dominique Ansel brings that big swan into the Met, we were never quite sure when he was arriving, and you're in touch with people, but there were a million different things going on, but we knew we wanted to see that swan come through that long corridor. So you can plan, but then you do miss things, but then you also capture things, you know, that are surprises, that are fun.
And one of those surprises I would imagine is a little bit of drama regarding, I think it was the executive chef of the Met, and also was it Dinara,
Nara,
regarding the
the
what was
moose.
it? The moose. Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, the fat
Um,
content of the moose, yeah.
I have never seen on film, and I don't want to really spoil it or the outcome, but I've never seen a confrontation quite like that, where there's almost this passive aggressive, but like a drama of politeness going on that was
Yeah.
really unique. Was it as tense watching that and filming it, or did it even register, you know, while it was going on?
Oh, it very much registered, and it had been building through the day. So, you know, in the movie, it's kind of a short scene, but it was, that tension was building. And my second unit director was actually there filming that. I wasn't, but he was letting me know that, okay, there's tension between Dinara and the Met chef, and he's kind of trying to help her, but he's also kind of being patronizing,
Yeah.
you know, and it's this very interesting dynamic, which I think is, you know, it's kind of great because Dinara finally just is like, I know how to do this and I can do this, you know, and kind of get out of my way.
Well, and there's drama too, because you don't ultimately know who's right in that situation until the scene, the situation resolves itself.
Yeah.
Because they are two people that are sort of the top of their game in different ways, coming at a situation they both think they have the right answer. One of the things that add attention to that is, as an audience member, I'm getting to see the subtitles of what she's saying, because she's kind of,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say freaking out in the best possible way. She's like trying to express why she thinks a big mistake is about to happen, but she's speaking in her her native Ukrainian language. Did you have a translator there on set to pick up on exactly what the tension was?
I mean, the tension was pretty clear because she was speaking in English to him and you could just feel it. And I think that I mean, I think to us, to the crew, it was pretty clear that he was, you know, this is something she does all the time, you know, and he does it too, but this is her specialty,
Yes.
right? And so I think it was pretty clear to us that basically he was yes, he was trying to help, but he was also, there was a bit of mansplaining going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, gently, but that, and that we didn't have a translator there. We translated it afterwards in the editing room, and that definitely added another layer, as you're saying, you know, of kind of conflict and another different dimension to the scene. But you could just tell she was stressed and she was frustrated, and she wanted to welcome his advice and help, but then she kind of also knew in her gut when it didn't make sense to her.
Yes.
So I think.
And that question of ego is something I also wanted to ask you about, because the popular reputation of the sort of celebrity chef is someone who's very egotistical, kind of crazy, you know, maybe not the most polite person. And perhaps that's just a perception from sort of the reality TV shows that we're inundated with. But in the Cakes of Versailles, we're presented with a team of artists who are very outgoing, very helpful and collaborative. It's
Yeah.
very strange to watch, very refreshing, particularly in these times. I guess my question is, was there an editorial choice on your part to not highlight any of those egos and just focus on the art? Or was it really that kind of kumbaya-ish atmosphere throughout the entire thing?
That's such an interesting question. You know, I think that Yotam selected people who aren't as ego driven. I think it's mostly that Yotam just happened to choose those people. He talked to them on the phone. I think they knew they would be filmed. I mean, part of it is people know they're being filmed too, right? But I don't know. I think that that's a really interesting question. I kind of think it's a combination of Mostly I think they're stressed out. They're in a new environment. They're trying to make something that they've never made in this particular kitchen. A lot of them are trying new things, and they don't have huge staffs there with them, right? So they're kind of doing all the work themselves. But I think mostly he didn't really choose those type of chefs, either by his own design or by luck. Not that they don't have egos. They all have egos,
It's the way they manifest, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think not in that kind of very traditional way that we're used to seeing, the kind of abusive, yelling and screaming chef.
Do you know, either in talking with Ottolenghi or perhaps being part of that selection process, were there any chefs that didn't make the cut, perhaps because of those, and not to name names, but do you know if there are any people who maybe he reached out to who thought, this could be a problem in the type of environment I'm trying to create?
No, I don't know anything about that. I think there was one chef early on that he reached out to that just wasn't available. And I can't even remember who that was, to tell you the truth. But no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that he really chose them for their specific artistry, and also because he wanted it to reflect the exhibition, which is called Visitors to Versailles. So it's an exhibition that's about the international nature of Versailles. So he really wanted not only a diverse group of people from all over the world, but he really wanted to showcase different aspects of patisserie and technology and flavors and creative expression. I think those were the things that were forefront in his mind when he was selecting the chefs.
Well, one of the more interesting, I think, subtle points of diversity in this collection of people is something that also is an aspect they had in common, which is kind of odd. A number of the chefs came from very different careers before they became pastry chefs. And what they share is the fact that they at once were not pastry chefs, and then they kind of dedicated their lives to this, including Yotam Ottolenghi. I wonder, did you get the sense in maybe talking to them, I don't know if you actually addressed this or not, but what is your feeling about, what is it about the culinary arts that maybe attracts people away from these other careers that maybe they're not in love with to pursue this lifetime of art and dedication? Or do you think you just happen to be filming a collection of people that share this in common?
Gosh, that's such a great question. I don't know. I mean, Yotam shares himself that for him, he was sort of, in some ways, it was just family expectation that he should have been an academic, right? So oftentimes people kind of come out of their upbringings with certain expectations that they're attached to, or their parents have sort of maybe implied they should go into or put pressure on them. It's like there's an exchange between Yotam and Dinara Casco when he's like, isn't your parents must be so proud of you? And she's like, well, I think my mom still wishes I were an architect, And I do think that also there's this, I mean, now chefs are, celebrities or whatever, but it wasn't that long ago that it wasn't considered sort of a prestigious, profession. So that's relatively recent, I think.
What do you attribute that to?
Gosh, I mean, I think you can go back and, I think it's a curiosity. It's part of the American food movement. If you just want to talk about America, it's about the American food movement being elevated and people writing about it and being interested in where our food comes from, and out of that came people like Wolfgang Puck, who were doing kind of, really interesting, kind of cutting edge things, back in, what was that, the late 70s, early 80s, or Alice Waters, right? I don't know. I think it's just sort of the way the American food movement evolved was, in some ways it was the 60s and 70s and kind of caring about the earth and caring about the planet and caring about farmers and the food we ate and recognizing that we're putting chemicals into our food and that kind of thing. And I just think there was sort of this natural connection then to food itself, and the artistry of it. I mean, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I wish you had more of a food historian to ask that question to, but I think it's an excellent question. And then I think food, media, television, of course, I mean, took
Yeah,
it to a whole new level.
yeah, there's an odd proliferation of like baking competition shows between
Yeah,
Nailed It and Sugar Rush and Great British
yeah,
Bake Off. It's a very strange phenomenon. But
yeah, no, it
um,
is. I agree.
speaking of that, that crusade sort of against processed foods and knowing what we're putting in our bodies, in profiling these chefs, you spent a lot of time with them in the kitchen, but also you followed a few of them to their homes and saw kind of where they lived. Did you ever catch them just sneaking a cheeseburger, or were they are they very much like, I'm going to make this gourmet snack if it's going to take me 3 hours to enjoy a 10-minute treat?
No, not on this film, but I just do know from working in other kind of food films or food shows. I mean, a lot of chefs, that's what they want to eat. They want to eat a cheeseburger. They don't want to eat, what they've spent hours in the kitchen making. I mean, and then that's also a bit of a cliche, I guess, about chefs, but I do think there's something to that. They just want to eat something simple and good.
Hmm.
And they're tired. They're also, how it is. Like if you're around food all day, it's kind of like, it's almost about sustenance at a certain point.
Yeah. Um, to kind of wrap it up, I was thinking about the end of the film, which acknowledges the sort of disparity or the idea of celebrating the decadence of Versailles,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in a time when you've got so much economic disparity in
Yep.
many, many different parts of the world. Now, you couldn't have known when you were filming this that those disparities would be so magnified by the time it actually came out. And now with COVID and the kind of civil unrest and all
Yeah.
this uncertainty that we're facing right now, are there any themes or messages in your movie that you think resonate even more given the situation that we're in?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting because I mean, it's those are things that we were definitely trying to draw parallels between when we made the film because 2018 is when we shot it. It wasn't that long ago, so we were already seeing all of this bubble up, right? Um, and it's just like if you look at the history of Versailles and you look at this sort of the way that the French monarchy promoted, their dominance and the wealth and the excess, it had this inevitable sort of impact. It made people feel excluded. It made people feel like, well, why do you have so much and I can't afford flour, you know? So we definitely felt that was a parallel that just felt natural and we didn't need to push that at all. If we just filmed, basically illustrated the sort of fall of Versailles and then also sort of showed the excess even at this event, even the waste of, throwing away half-eaten desserts, that those parallels would come through, but you were right, it's magnified now for sure. And brought to a real head, you know.
Yeah. I do like the sort of the difference that's drawn in the film between the idea of this luxury and decadence in the food at Versailles being in service of sort of the king, but in terms of what this Versailles event at the Met was, it was to showcase the personal achievements and the art of the individual chefs. I think that's really cool.
Oh,
Um,
good. Glad you
yeah.
like that.
So yeah, I guess thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me. Congratulations on the movie. It was very eye-opening, and I think it's a cliche. It's the kind of entertainment we need right now. But I really think I'll stand by that cliche in
Okay,
this case.
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
good. Well,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Really appreciate it, Ian. Good to meet you.
All right, take it easy.
Okay, bye.
Bye.